And I think what it feels like, why it feels so viral, that it's, in places like New Jersey, is that it has a sort of insidious nature. And what it does quietly is create, generates lists, etc. But what it also does is the human part of it is very serious, the safety and well-being of these librarians who are pursuing the idea of education, the gateway to information and curiosity.
Hello, and welcome to the Made for TV Movie Club, now playing. I am Kristin, one half of the Made for TV Movie Club podcast, where we review and recap TV movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Here on our YouTube channel, we review current TV and film projects and interview professionals in the entertainment field. As our listeners of the podcast know, we love all things TV and movie from the late 20th century, but this channel allows us to show love for the modern entertainment industry. With all that said, let's begin.
Hello and welcome. I am Beth, the other half of the Made for TV Movie Club podcast. Recently, I went with these lovely people to see a documentary called The Librarians, which was part of the Milwaukee Film Festival, which I've talked about a lot on this channel because I've seen a lot of films I've reviewed. As you know, the Oriental Theater is a very old theater, historic theater in Milwaukee. I think it was built in 1937. I believe it was 1937, if my memory recalls correctly. Then again, we don't know. My memory is not always great. So I wanted to talk about this film, this documentary, and I was trying to think of a way to do that I could do by myself, and it just didn't make any sense to talk about it alone. So we all decided collectively, because we were still talking about this film long after we stopped watching it, that we would do a panel discussion, and that's why we're all here tonight. Everybody will introduce themselves in a moment, but first I want to tell you what IMDb says about this film. Librarians unite to combat book banning, defending intellectual freedom on democracy's front lines amid unprecedented censorship in Texas, Florida, and beyond. Sundance South by Southwest Film Festival website says librarians emerge as first responders in the fight for democracy and our First Amendment rights. As they well know, controlling the flow of ideas means control over communities. In Texas, the Krause list targets 850 books focused on race and LGBTQIA+ stories, triggering sweeping book bans across the U.S. at an unprecedented rate. As tensions escalate, librarians connect the dots from heated school and library board meetings nationwide to lay bare the underpinnings of white Christian nationalism, fueling the censorship efforts. Despite facing harassment, threats, and laws aimed at criminalizing their work, the librarians' rallying cry for freedom is to read is a chilling and cautionary tale. I also want to mention that this film is executive produced by Sarah Jessica Parker, and it is directed by a woman named Kim A. Schneider, who is a Peabody and Oscar-nominated filmmaker. So this movie really, really made me mad in so many ways. It actually made me scared too, which we're going to talk about once we all start talking about our experiences and we start asking questions with one another about the film. But I want to say, on one side, we have the freedom fighters, who are a group of librarians, many of whom have lost their jobs for not giving into the book banning. And then we have another group on the other side called the Moms of Liberties. I think that our feelings on the Moms of Liberties will become clear without us actually having to say it out loud. So whether you're a longtime library lover or just discovering the depth of what libraries do, we hope today's panel sparks insight, reflection, and perhaps even action. Before we start, I want everyone to go and introduce themselves and tell your viewers your name, your connection to the libraries, and your unique connection to this topic. As you know, I'm Beth. I'm co-host of this podcast and the Made for TV Movie Club podcast. I'm a professor. I have 2 advanced degrees in English, 2 master's degrees. And so to that I say, you don't get to tell me what to read. Case, take it away.
Okay, hi. I'm Kirsten, and I am a an educator and a mother and a supporter of freedom and rights to access information for all. And I believe that public institutions, it is our responsibility as citizens of a free government to support the public institutions that freely share this information.
Wonderful. Kristin, welcome.
Hi, my name is Kristin. I'm a huge reader. I also argue for my fight to read. I have a degree in English literature and a degree in fashion design, and I've worked in the fashion industry for the last couple of decades. But I read diversely, and every year I have a resolution to continue that because we learned it in college. So read a science, read a biography, read a history, read a bestseller, and read something that looks awful to you, and you might find yourself surprised and delighted.
It's true. And I'm in 2 book clubs with Kristin, so it's kind of fun to be talking about this. Justin, for those of you who listen to the audio podcast, this is my son Justin, who I do talk about on the podcast. We've also talked about Kristin, so you probably have heard that name if you listen to the audio podcast. But Justin is one of 50% of my children.
Yes, that's right. Hello, everybody. My name is Justin. I'm currently an accountant, so I spend a lot of time in books, whether that's reading them or actually balancing them. I recently rediscovered my love to read. I am an advocate, and I would consider myself by becoming more of a philanthropist and an activist, especially in terms of LGBTQ plus rights and also in terms of the freedom to read. I believe that reading is fundamental, as I learned growing up watching PBS and other educational television. And my connection to books really started when I was in elementary school, because I remember we would go to the library and check out books to read and bring them home. And I would like to thank my public school teachers for that, because they really kind of instilled that love to read. And I'm also a graduate student, so I spent a lot of time on the online library researching and writing about different business aspects. I'm a graduate student pursuing a Master of Business Administration, and my research is focused on the different issues pertaining to marketing, leadership. Right now, I'm in the applied psychology class, so I'm doing a lot of research about how to manage human capital. So that's also been really wonderful. Just being able to read and also have access to an online library is awesome. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for this discussion.
Awesome. All right, Case, why don't you start us out?
All right, so let's start with reactions to the movie. What was your emotional or intellectual response after watching Librarians? So we'll start with Beth.
Well, I think it's kind of clear based on my comment earlier, but my emotional and intellectual response was both intense anger. In fact, I was talking to somebody about the film. Kristin and I were at a book club, and we were telling a mutual friend of ours about the film, and I was like getting angry, and she was like, "Oh, are you okay?" Because I was like, I've never been in a fight in my life, but this made me so angry that I actually had a visceral reaction to it, and I still feel that strongly about it.
Excellent. Kristin.
Well, after I got over you stealing some of my popcorn, my initial response to the movie was fear. I walked out of there a little sick to my stomach. I felt really fearful, because to me this feels like not just the beginning, but it feels like a big portion of what we've always read about. See how I use the word read as in read a book. Read about in history books. You've read about book banning, and book banning is this angry beginning to further tyranny. Later, now my response to it is like, I'm so glad that this movie is out, because book banning is this little thing that I read online and I laugh at it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. These crazy people, these conservatives, these whatever. And now this outreach has shown me how big it is. So it's scarier, but it's also, I feel like the more aware people become of the issue, maybe we can thwart this.
Excellent. I agree. Justin.
I would agree with you, Kristin, as well. My initial reaction was, honestly, I was shocked because it kind of put into perspective how much of an issue this has become lately. And it also really has kind of gone to show how people really don't understand what's going on in public schools and what they think is not actually reality. And it was really eye-opening to me to see these people who are claiming that children are being indoctrinated in public schools, yet while they are actively pushing a partisan narrative, which is the definition of indoctrination. So I was really shocked at first, but then it kind of lit this fire under me where it's like, this is not okay. Book banning is unacceptable, and that children should have the ability to read what they want in school because that's what we pay taxes for. And it kind of made me angry, not gonna lie. It made me angry enough to not only do this, but also it made me angry enough to start, pushing back and resisting this change. And it's like, I believe in the freedom of speech, and I believe that books are a freedom of speech. So it kind of pushed me to move forward, and also it really opened my eyes to what's going on and how awful some people can be. So yeah, that was my initial reaction to it. So
I like how you just said that the anger pushed you to join your mom's podcast.
yeah, I mean,
And this is now my response.
And that is why I have to say, as I was watching it, as an educator in a school district where books have been challenged a number of times, it confirmed for me my belief that it is a very small but very vocal group who has made it their mission to control how other people live their lives. That really is what it comes down to, because when you look to the books that they are choosing to ban, there is absolutely no way you can ignore the blatant racism, homophobia, on and on. It is definitely a very specific agenda, and I agree with you, Justin. It's indoctrination of their beliefs rather than
Right.
Allowing people to form their own beliefs, and that's
Right.
what I feel really strongly about. So I was watching it and thinking, there have been times that it's been real close to that in my own district, and I'm really grateful for the voices of reason who have come out and who will continue to be voices of reason, so that youngsters do have the opportunity to learn about even something as simple as cultures that are different to their own. And I feel like as an educator that's our responsibility, is to provide that diverse opportunities of reading, and to agree with what Kristin said, the fiction and the nonfiction and the historical and the, maybe something that you wouldn't be interested in learning about, or maybe something that you're super interested about. So, so having said that, was there a moment or a story that in the film that particularly stayed with you? And this time I'm going to start with Justin. I'm going to go backwards around my little.
She's exerting her control.
That's right.
Yeah, I think there was more than one moment that stood out to me, but I think the moment that stood out to most was when I forgot the character, or not the character, that's not the word, the person's name in the film, actually going to the school board with his mom there, and they are complete opposite sides politically. Like, he is if I'm not mistaken, he was a gay man. He's obviously, his political views.
Weston Brown. His name was Weston Brown. Yes. His mother was Monica.
Yes, and basically just him going up and saying that this is not okay, and standing up for what he believes in, not only standing up for other people, but also kind of calling out the hypocritical nonsense of this book banning movement. And I think that just really stuck with me. And also that part after that, when she was recording him and then she ran away. And I'm like, to me, that just shows that cowardice is the word I'm looking for. And if you're really going to believe in something, you have to stand up for it 100%. and you can't back down, because that shows that not only are you weak if you back down, you also are a coward and a chicken, in my opinion. And that doesn't make you a good, not only does that not make you a good leader, it also makes you look like a fool, because you're pushing all this stuff saying, oh, I'm all for this, blah, 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 blah. But then as soon as you're challenged, you back down. So that kind of makes me wonder, like, what does that really say about you as a person? And it also proves that you don't stand by what you believe in 100% if you're not willing to actively push back against people resisting against what you're trying to do.
Excellent. Kristin.
Well, one thing that stood out for me is I get wrapped up in labels or phrases that people adopt. Like an example, pro-life is a very misleading title, right? So in the movie, it was really my first introduction to Moms for Liberty. And I was immediately struck with the irony of that. Like, you're talking about liberty, but you really want your child just to read a book about yourselves. And there is no expansion. And it made me think of things like, don't tread on me. Like, that used to be a fight for freedom against the British, whatever. And now it's been co-opted by a very conservative contingent in the US. And it's actually kind of the opposite meaning. Like, shouldn't don't tread on me be adopted by BLM and by the LGBTQ community, etc. So I was very pleased that the Librarians took the name Freedom Fighters.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
Yes,
Because initially it sounds like a Republican faction, and it's like, it is exactly very clear language, because they read books and know how to use words properly. It's a very clear message. This is freedom. This is the freedom of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think for me, honestly, it was like this. So I used to be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist in that I loved, I love a good conspiracy. I love a good mystery.
I was going to say used to be.
I know. Now I'm really, obsessed with missing people, but not in a much broader sense of some of the things out there. I'll be honest with you. I don't really believe in Bigfoot anymore, but that's a whole different topic.
But Boo Shaw.
Yes, the Boo Shaw returns.
Yes,
but I did get this deep sense of fear, and is this really what is really happening when they started talking about the billionaire that was funding the Moms for Liberty? And I just felt a real darkness over this film and a fear. And I was like, are these people safe? Are they safe? Are they going to be able to have this film come out?
Right.
And be safe in their worlds, even though they clearly have formed a union of themselves, to fight and to be strong and all of the things. But there's a real danger, it seems like. It just was so foreboding, and it truly scared me. It honestly really did. And I can't even remember the billionaire's name, and it doesn't matter. I probably don't want to say it anyway, but it just made me fearful for those people, and that was what's really stayed with me for so long. But what I haven't mentioned, that we haven't mentioned yet, is the film opens with a librarian who is remaining anonymous. At the end of the film, she does reveal herself. But I mean, when she first comes on, I guess I didn't understand the fear that kept her. I guess I really didn't understand what was really, truly happening. I think Kristin touched on it. You read it on the news, but until you actually are given the backstory, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea these people's careers were ruined. And then Martha Hickson, she was slandered as a pedophile because she wouldn't remove some of the books that, by the way, had nothing to do with pedophilia at all in any sense of anything.
Right.
So it made me so mad to see that happen. But I'm like, oh, are they okay? Are they going to be okay? And they're the bravest people that I know, which is exactly how I've always thought of librarians anyway.
I think you're talking about Audrey. I think that was her name. She remains in the shadows for most of the film.
Yeah.
And then after the film concludes, then we understand her job was threatened. Your job threatened means also your stand in your community. People are aware of this, and your income for your family.
Yeah.
And it's a big risk to step forward. And she ultimately did it because she thought it was big enough.
And we wonder how many people weren't mentioned that have lost everything and didn't make it to the film and haven't been able to come back and get another job somewhere else. Because a lot of the people we see in this film, the librarians, have figured out a way to make income by doing things like writing books themselves and things like that. So they've been able to, but we're talking about lifelong careers that are lost, that are lost because they won't take a book off the shelf. It's absurd.
I think that the story that struck me was the story of Courtney, who was so adamant about banning books at the beginning of the film, and you almost start to hate her for the things that she's saying, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what did she just say? Did I mishear? And then you realize she's completely done a 180.
Yeah.
She realizes how harmful these ideas of book banning and censorship, how bad they are. So I think it's amazing to see how smart Courtney is to have actually sat down and done some thinking about, what does this really mean? Instead of just remaining on the bandwagon, she wasn't afraid to say, I made a mistake. And I think that makes her one of the bravest people in the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get swept up in the movement, as it were, of the Moms for Liberty. So, I do know that the whole idea of pornography and then exposing children to pornography, that is a major talking point of Moms for Liberty. And that's something that they bring up. They have brought it up in my school district, that well, then we can arrest these people for exposing children to pornography, which is just ridiculous. So the documentary opens with a quote from Fahrenheit 451, which is something that my daughter and I read together last summer. And it's this quote: "It was a pleasure to see things burn. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed." Why do you think they chose this quote to open the film? And this time I'm going to start with Kristin.
I just want to say one little aside. Just to be clear, I know that you are against pornography for children. What you're trying to say is that the way you define pornography is not the word erection in a young adult novel.
Exactly. Thank you.
I know what you meant. I just
know where I stand. Yes.
I want to make sure the trolls understand that nobody is pro pornography for children.
Not at all. That is not. But I mean, nobody is. So that's part of the craziness of the whole indoctrination, right? And the belief. So sorry, I'll let you finish, Kristin.
Well, that's okay. That quote is interesting to me. It exudes the pleasure of power. That's what it seems like to me. And I haven't read that book actually. But I don't know the context behind it, but to me, it exudes the pleasure of destroying something that somebody else held beloved.
I agree with that. I think that's actually, considering you haven't read the book, that's actually exactly what I think they meant.
Yeah.
I read Beloved.
Well, I'll bring it.
You know what?
Kristin, I'll bring it next time I come over.
Yeah, you should. It's an easy read, and it's a great.
Oh, I have it.
It's a great book. Yeah, it's a great book.
Oh, did I give it to you?
No, I haven't. It's on my bookshelf. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. Justin, what do you think, honey?
I agree with Kristin. I think I have not read Fahrenheit 451, but I also think that the quote that they chose to open the movie with, or the film with, really kind of spoke to the impact that book banning has, and the fact that people have pleasure in controlling the narrative, and they take pleasure and enjoyment in saying one thing but doing another. And it's kind of like 1984, if you will, because, if you think about it, those who control the current timeline right now also control the future, but those who control the future control the past. So it's kind of like a paradox, if you will. And it's just really interesting to see like what that meant in not only in Fahrenheit 451, but also in terms of like what the impact of book banning is, or it has been on librarians and school teachers and other members of the community.
Justin, that was brilliant. Those who control the future control the past. I think that's the foundation of this conversation, because history repeats itself, right? Like we hear this all the time. The whole point of nonfiction books, Anne Frank's Diary, Mouse, these things about the Holocaust is for people to hear you and to listen so that history does not repeat itself. The problem is, obviously, you cannot control what the reader thinks. All you can do is offer information. And like Elie Wiesel, I just read his book, Night, his horrifying memoir of the Holocaust. And he talks about it, how there's a parable in the beginning of it that people don't listen. So you can have an experience and you can talk about it and people don't listen, which really means don't take it in and hear it. But that's what books are supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to be the family that hid Anne Frank's family. I want to be the person who stood up and fought. I want to be the person who was helpful.
And I hope that this conversation is a way to start that. I mean, people are going to watch this and hopefully formulate their own opinions and stuff. But I hope that we're starting a broader conversation by talking about this film. One thing I do say to Justin often is everything is cyclical. One of my professors said that, and it's always stuck with me. Like 30 years later, I still think about that. But another point before I let Kristin sort of ask some questions, I just wanted to go back to something Casey was talking about quite a while ago and expand on an idea that I had recently. And that is, we think about expertise, right? Like when you want to learn how to have a better diet, you would go to a dietitian, right? If you're sick, you go see a doctor, right? But we're living in a world now where all you have to do is make a popular TikTok and you're suddenly an expert, even though you may not have any expertise in the field. And so that's why earlier when I was talking about my degrees, I'm not doing that to brag. You three know that. And I hope that people who listen to us know that I would never do that. But what I want to say is I have an expertise in my field. So you who, like Monica Wood in the film, her kids never even went to public schools. And yet she's one of the leaders of this book banning brigade. She gets to be that because she pays taxes in the community. That's really the only thing I can think of. But what other expertise? And nobody's questioning who these people are and why they get to make a decision about what our children read. And I think it's just something to think about as we move on and let Kristin ask her questions.
Oh.
Kristin's turn.
I thought these were the questions I was going to be asked, so I misunderstood. These are the questions I'm asking. Okay.
You're asking, and you can answer them if you want.
How does the film speak to larger issues like freedom of information, censorship, or equity? Who wants to go?
I'll go. I think it sheds a brighter light onto an issue that is, I don't want to say small because it's not small, but it kind of sheds a light onto an issue that other people might not know is going on. But also, again, freedom of information and censorship and equality is a real threat to our society. And I think this film really kind of digs deep into not only the impact of book banning, but also how we got here in the first place. And in the film, like talks about, I'm trying to not go on a political rant here, but they talked about how money and politics and greed and everything kind of morphed into this thing is what it is now. And I think it kind of plays a really important role in highlighting that issue. And it also really kind of goes to show that this is a problem and this is a real threat, even if you don't see it in your public school lives day to day. Granted, I went to a public school. I went to public elementary, middle, and high schools, and I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this issue until I watched this film. And like I said, it really kind of highlights and speaks to those larger issues of the impacts of book banning and what it's led to in the past. But also to Kristin's point earlier, history does repeat itself, but we are knowledgeable through our reading and learning through history. to know how to stop it. And I think it just kind of really sheds an important light on that message. So, and this does happen. And although you might not be able to control everything, you are powerful, and you do have the ability and the power to stop it, and also to call people out who do wrong, and also those who actively say they're for free speech, but then actively try to ban a form of free speech.
Right. That is such a good response, Justin. I have nothing more to say about him. I agree with everything he said.
I agree as well. I think that Justin, you did a really good job of getting to all of the points of that. But I'm really interested in hearing what Kristin has to say about this.
Yes, me too.
Oh, about this. Well, we were talking about this after the movie. It's about equity, right? Like how if you don't have information about something that's been going on, like, sorry, I'm stumbling, but critical race theory, for a great example, right? To take that out of a school, like, where's the equity in that, right? Like, so basically you are funneling a story and saying, we are great, we are white people, and we were owed this land, and we came over and we took it, and everything is wonderful. And I don't understand that. Like, what is the problem with reading about the other side of the story, which actually is the real story, and reframing history and learning to say, we made a mistake, and here's how we're going to move forward? So even if it's not like overtly racist, it's overtly racist.
Yes, that's a great point. And I actually just thought of something, Kristin, when you're talking about reframing history. I took a colonial literature class when I was in undergrad, and back then there was no female voices because women couldn't read, women couldn't write. The only thing that we have from women written down during that period are recipe books and possibly like journals, like what we need to do day to day, or how do you change the broom handle, that kind of thing. Those things were written down, which I think are powerful pieces of information to understand how strong and how women lived at that time. But when you don't have the history, when you don't have the conversation, when you don't know anything else, then that's all you know, right? So I guess my point is kind of furthering what you're saying, right? If we take out information, if we take it away, then we don't have the ability to learn about it, right? You're literally removing it.
Right.
And it just seems like such an unfair way to live a life. And it seems like, aren't you curious about how people live and what they think? And I mean, I guess there are certain people in the world that don't feel like it's important to find out how other people live. And I think that's a deficit to their life, but also you don't get to make the decision on what I want to learn, and I think that's at the heart of what we're talking about. But I don't know why, when I just thought of that class in my head, and like, all there were recipes, that's what we know about an entire population of people.
Or possibly letters, like correspondence to other women. Like, that's as close to maybe history.
There weren't many. They weren't allowed to. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different panel discussion, ladies. What do you got for us next, Kristin?
Okay. Next question. What role do libraries play in strengthening communities, especially during times of crisis? Beth?
Well, libraries have a very, very big role in our lives. And I mean, if you think about it, like historically, libraries are buildings that are in sort of the center of an area, right? In some big cities, there's a lot of them, but they're the center, right? So people go there for information. And now we go there for more than that. You can rent things, like some libraries rent wedding dresses. Some libraries now rent fishing equipment. You can go and you can get on the computer. And let's say there's some information you need to know that maybe might be in something from an old newspaper or something. You have that access. And libraries have humongous budgets and still can't have everything that they would like to have in them. But if you require knowledge, that's supposed to be the safe place where you go to get that knowledge. That's where we're supposed to go, and that's what they're meant to be. And so I think they're incredibly important to any community. And I think it would be really sad to see, like, if find out one closes down. I actually have a really cute little book. I'll show it to you guys that are just pictures of libraries around the United States, because some of them are huge, like, in New York, and the library that we went to for the fashion show, Kristen, huge, beautiful libraries
Right.
that are communal places. And some of them, Justin and I we used to have a place up near the Wisconsin Rapids, and it was a little room. Like, the room itself, the library itself was probably 50 feet by 50 feet. That's it. It was tiny, and yet it was still a place where children went in the summertime, and they had activities for kids, and they did a lot of it outside because it was so small. But I think that just shows how important libraries are to communities.
Yeah, they're like the building version of the Yellow Pages.
They kind of are, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love libraries, and I'm never going to not love them.
I think it's important to know that when you speak about times of crisis and libraries, not only is it a place to get information, but they are literally places for people to warm their bodies and cool their bodies.
That too.
During, it really struck me in my own community. It was a number of years ago, and I was just returning a book, and I noticed a whole family was at the library, including small children, and the parents made the comment like, "Yeah, we're going to stay here until you close because we don't have air conditioning." And it was, while we don't have the kind of heat that you might experience in further south states, it can get 100 degrees is pretty darn hot, and here for more apropos to living in the state is the warming centers for unhoused population, and we've heard time and time again how the library was sort of like the place that people could go, and that was sort of their home. There's a wonderful children's book that's probably been banned. I've never even actually looked it up, but it's called Bud Not Buddy. And
all good books have been banned in some form or another case. Just know that.
Yeah. And Bud in the story spends his days at the library and sleeps at night in the bushes outside of the library for part of the story. And it's, it's very telling. It's very telling. So not just like the physical space being there in times of crisis, but like when people have a need for something, the library very often can fulfill that need.
Right. Kristen, what do you think?
Well, I think, what we've been talking about shows like how important it is as a cornerstone of the community, right? But then a community is made up of individuals, right? So your strength is in your individuals. If you have a teenage girl who goes to the library and stumbles upon a book about teenage angst or whatever, in which maybe there's a character with bulimia, maybe there's a character who's cutting, she might say to herself, it's not just me.
Right.
I feel seen. Yeah. And that strength of that individual privately is going to help the community at large. You become aware that it's not just you, you're not alone.
Agreed.
Love that.
Justin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I've always kind of looked at libraries as a place of knowledge and a place to gain knowledge. And I go by the 3 words of life that knowledge is power. And that if you are reading facts and factual information, which is usually what is put in libraries, because, we have scholarly peer-reviewed information in academic journals and yada, 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 that is a source of knowledge, and you are empowering yourself by learning that knowledge. And I guess I didn't realize the impact that libraries had on communities either. I mean, like growing up, we spent a lot of time at the library, and I remember going to school and going to the library to check out books to read in class. And I've always thought of this library as like a place where you go and check out books and you can like Google things, and I guess I guess I didn't really realize the critical role that libraries play in communities. And now kind of as an adult who's sitting here after watching this documentary and being out of high school for however long, and 2 years out of my undergraduate degree, and now I'm in grad school again, it's really interesting to just see how my mindset has kind of changed, but also learning and understanding that libraries are critical to our society, and that it's an important thing to have a library, and that libraries are the center of knowledge and the center of
Mhm.
power, if you will, in a sense.
Well, and I love the word community. Like when I lived
Yeah.
in Oakland, California, there was a big tool library,
Mhm.
and I had just bought a very large level to hang some animal paintings on my wall. And I got like a 6-foot level. Obviously, I could have done the same job with a smaller one, but it was
Yeah.
much easier to do it this way. I used it once, donated it to the library because
Oh yeah.
who needs a 6-foot level?
You never know, right? But that's the very part of what the point is, right? That it's something that you can share with somebody else in the community who might need it.
Yep.
Right.
And the library offers spaces for AA meetings, and it offers community conversations on caretaking family members. And there's ones that are specific to dementia, et cetera. I mean, it's such a resource.
Right, and not to mention all of the reading programs for the kids and the summer. I mean, that was a big part of our summer was the summer reading program at our school, and they had a big ice cream social at the end of the season. And I mean, hundreds of people would show up for this ice cream social. So many so that it was difficult to even find a place to sit. It was amazing that all these kids, spent their summers reading and did all engaged in all these activities. And like and then the other thing is public lectures. That's the other thing that are often at libraries. So I just it's a really important a part of people's lives if they take advantage of that.
I agree.
I would agree with that as well.
Justin, do you want to go to your questions?
Sure. The first question I have is, why do they think book banning is a liberty while they're actively denying the children the freedom and liberty to read books?
We're going to let Kristin take that one because she had some great points. No, you made some really good points.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about the word freedom and like being co-opted on the wrong side of freedom. But I find when I'm trying to understand somebody's anger or an issue, I try to think like what started this, what made them think this way, what is going on. And in this case, I feel like this comes down to trust. Like you don't trust the people around you. Example, most of these people who are banning books have read portions or whole books in order to suggest banning them. By doing that, have you not empirically disproven your own point? Did you become a gay vampire when
That's
you
so good?
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so you just don't trust anybody else to do it. Did you immediately read Flowers in the Attic and then sleep with your brother and poison your grandmother? I doubt it.
Right. And it's like, did I read Romeo and Juliet and then want to go run off and find a princess and then murder my you know what I mean? It's like
Exactly.
And to your point, Justin, what's so interesting is that like we're teaching Romeo and Juliet, we're banning all these books, and we're not really looking at the actual. I mean, I don't want to harp on this because I've said it before, but Romeo and Juliet was 13 years old and Romeo was an adult. Right. So we've got some serious issues there, right. But we're still teaching that one. So there's so much hypocrisy involved in it. But I think your point, Kristin, is so right on. It's right on.
If you think of this, sorry, I interrupted.
No, you didn't.
If you think of this as like a court case, right? Like you've got these people like doing all the evidence, all the research, and we're going to step forward. But you step forward as the prosecutor only to become the key witness for the defense. Have you read this book? Yes. Did it change you in any way? No.
No, just like I said, I read Helter Skelter when I was 12. I didn't become a prosecutor or a serial killer.
Right. And going back to your point, Kristin, it's like it's like you lose credibility in your argument, so your argument has no merit. And to your point, that would not go well in a courtroom because that's like, reading a court evidence case as an attorney and then basically saying, I don't believe this. Right. So you have no case. And that's not going to go well over with the judge either. And it's like, you're basically kind of shooting yourself in your foot, if you will,
Right.
by making your argument not only invalid but also proving my point by actively doing what I just said without even realizing it. And
Right.
I mean, I read Night by Elie Wiesel when I was in high school, and it was a fantastic read. Not because maybe not fantastic, not the right word, but
I know.
it
I
was
struggled with it. Yeah.
so eye-opening just to see what people lived through, and it kind of changed my life. And it's like, holy moly, it really not only opened my eyes to see what can happen, but also it makes me afraid of history repeating itself.
Right.
And we also had to read it, or not had to read it, we were assigned to read it because we had a Holocaust literature unit in my 11th grade English class. And in my opinion, that was an appropriate read because we were all young adults. We were 16, 17, some of us might have been 18. So we were at the maturity level to read this book, but also we had prior history, like history classes about world history and U.S. history and the Holocaust and World War II and everything.
Yes.
So
Right.
we kind of got into the more subject matter of the book.
Yeah.
And I hope they don't ban Night by Elie Wiesel because it is one of the most important books to read,
Yes.
especially for people who are in high school, because
Right.
as young adults, we are kind of transitioning into that phase of our next period of our lives. And it's like, well, wouldn't we be better off being prepared and understanding U.S. history in order to not repeat it, or not U.S. history, but not world history, not to repeat it again?
And the point of books is not just self-serving, right? Like it's
Right.
not all about you. Like
Right.
maybe you're going to meet a gay vampire at a party and you want to know how to talk to them. Like, do you have to invite them in or can they do it themselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're not always reading about yourself. You're reading about other people, how to behave in society, who you're going to come across. It prepares you for starting a job and having a rotten boss, or it prepares you for all sorts of characters that are just forced into your path, and it changes your own behavior. It's like self-helpy.
And if we're removing all the stuff for all the reasons, what books are we going to read? They're boring. Nobody wants to read a boring book.
Right.
Nobody wants to read a book where you go to the store and you buy a bag of sugar and you come home. That's not that interesting. That's what we all do. So what's left? Like you're going to start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. We haven't heard from Case for a while, so why don't you jump on in?
Well, I've been dealing with barking dogs.
Oh,
and
that's
all
okay.
kinds of things over here. Hopefully, they're in the other room now. So
everybody out.
I think the biggest concern that I have is that someone else thinks they get to decide what my child can or cannot read. I've got that. Thank you very much. I am parenting my child.
Right.
And
again, well qualified to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. And the some of the books that have been listed, shall I say, that people have attempted to ban, that people have successfully banned. There are a lot of children's picture books that are on that list. And I remember at one point in time, the controversy, or I guess the biggest concern that the book banners had in one situation was, well, if there's a call to action on the children's part, then that is not an appropriate book for a child to read. And it was like, I don't know, I think Saving the Turtles is probably a pretty good call to action. And
when do you start becoming an advocate if you don't do it in your childhood, right?
Right.
That reminds me of
your muted, Case.
Oh, there was a teacher in the news. There was a teacher in the news like maybe 10 years ago that was quoted as saying, I don't want to talk to the kids about polar bears. Like they have enough to worry about without worrying about that too. It's like, oh my God. It's part of our planet. We thrive if we have a planet.
And it's okay to talk. I mean, I believe in age appropriateness, but I also believe that, it's okay to teach it. You don't have to save the polar bears the first time you become an advocate or you want to do something as a child. We can teach you to do something smaller. We got to make sure we stop running in the halls. There's ways to teach children that aren't dangerous to them or whatever. But if they can read if there's a child that's very sad about something and they can find a book that makes them feel, and it doesn't even have to make them happy, it might just make them feel seen, isn't it worth it then to keep that book on the shelf?
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, and then
Children's books-
my other comment is, would they be okay with the Bible being banned in schools?
Right.
Because if we're banning books, technically, isn't the Bible a book?
Well, there's some stuff in the Bible too that
Right, that's what I
we
mean.
talk
So
about,
it's
just like we were talking about earlier, like with Shakespeare. There's a lot of stuff in Shakespeare, like I say all the murders,
Yeah.
but we're still teaching it, and that's okay. But a murder in this book is not okay. I mean, it just where does it end? It just, you pull a thread and you can't stop pulling it, and now we have to read your boring books. No, thank you. No, thank
Right.
you, ma'am.
Like Lot's daughter is being sent out to distract the angels, to be raped by a marauding group of men in order to distract them from hurting the angels. Maybe that should be banned.
Right, but we're allowed to, the kids are, it's a thread that once you start pulling. So, Justin, I think we kind of touched on your second question. Why don't you ask the third one? Because I know Kristin has a lot to say about it, and that, as well do we.
Yeah, so the question I have is, could you make the argument that book banning is a form of anti-Semitism because they're actively banning books that are Holocaust literature?
Kristin.
I mean, I think we did talk about this a little bit. Like, we talked about how just because you're a book banner doesn't necessarily make you sexist, racist, bigoted, etc. But when you look closer at what you are banning and why, doesn't it make you a bit of those things?
Yeah.
The books are specifically about race and LGBTQ experiences.
Yep. And we should also mention, which we haven't yet, is there are scenes in this movie where they go back and they show people banning books during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So there is a history of this already, although, they probably want to ban that film as well. So I just wanted to point that out because it is a big part of the discussion that opens up from this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, Case, what do you have to think? What do you think about it?
I think I have barking dogs again. Sorry.
Oh no! I don't hear any barking dogs.
The baseball team is getting out from the park, and even though she can't hear, she can see people walking, and she's going to let them know. I would say absolutely. Just to piggyback off of what Kristin said before, it's very, very difficult to look at the list of books that are on the top of the list that these groups want to have banned from our children's libraries and our neighborhoods libraries, our communities libraries. There's a very clear thread of the content of those books, and one thing I wanted to speak to just briefly before is I heard someone say this once, and I don't recall who it was, but children's books are a place where we can deal with some really heavy content because it's a children's book, because it's a picture book, because it's a lighter place, it's a safer place, and to take that away from our youngsters, it is just heartbreaking to me. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, and it doesn't help anybody grow emotionally if you're only reading happy tales.
Right.
Exactly. You're exactly. Veggie Tales are. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with those books, but I mean, it's the dirt in life that makes things interesting, right? And I think, and whether we pull the books or not, people are going to have the experiences they're going to have, and they're going to have to deal with what they have to deal with. And wouldn't it make more sense to let them deal with it with a book that will help them, that might help them, that might, even if it doesn't make, like I said, make them happy, it might make them feel seen, or it might give them something they didn't know they needed. I mean, there's so many ways books can help. And of course, there's books that don't help. There's just, books that we just like to read for pleasure. Right, because they're fun and because they're interesting. But you know what's not interesting? You drive into the store to buy a bag of sugar. You know what I mean? We want the
You know what's
depth of the
interesting?
story and the reality and
Ventriloquism is interesting. Ventriloquism is very interesting.
I was looking to see
We
if
are
I
reading
stuffed animal.
we're reading a very flat book that would not be banned because it is a Christian
Yep.
story. Unfortunately, it's about ventriloquism, etc. And in it, I won't mention the name of the book, but in it, every character who's a little bit of a jerk is non-Christian. It's such a flat,
Yep.
unrealistic view of the world. But further to this point, the director in the interview that we watched about this, the director did say that you can't talk about book banning without wrapping it up in all these other issues, without
Right.
wrapping it up in white Christian nationalism, without wrapping it up in the Republican conservative billionaires who fund planting people onto school boards. It's not
Right.
even funding a school board, it's planting. It is paying to win an election.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and Kristin, to your point, I had never heard of the Moms of Liberties before, and whatever. But I was doing research on something else. I actually don't even remember what it was, and I went down to look at some of their source material. And one of those pieces of source material was a story about the Moms of Liberty. So they're doing much more than just trying to ban books.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
And that is what's frightening. So before I ask the last question to you guys, Justin, what would you like to say about this before we move on?
Well, I think I want to say that although, how do I want to word this? Although people might not see book banning for what it really is, I do believe it is a form of white Christian nationalism, anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia, because you are actively trying to suppress minority communities. But the other part that I don't understand is white people were also persecuted in the Holocaust.
Right.
So I don't understand. It's like you're trying to ban Holocaust literature, but you're a white person.
But you're also, but to that point, remember that there was also, they weren't thinking exactly. Sometimes if you don't think exactly how somebody else thinks, even if you look like them, that's a problem for those people as well. We brought up the control issue. You have to think like me.
Yep.
You must think like me. And if you don't, I think that's a really short answer to your question.
Yeah. And I watched an interview with Harvard University's president, and he said that, and I agree with this, that book banning and suppression is a form of anti-Semitism. It might not be one form. It's not the only form, but it is a form.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a form of racism and homophobia, to my previous point, because you are actively trying to control the narrative, and you are not letting people not only not be who they are, you're trying to push a narrative that they might not agree with. And I am all for people practicing whatever religion they want. I don't have an issue with that. That's part of our First Amendment right. But I'm also entitled to my opinion that I think that book banning is a form of those things. And I think it's disgusting. And if the other point that I want to say is, if you don't want your children going to a public school, then don't let them. But it's not fair for you to try and control what I want to read in a public setting at a library that I pay taxes for. Mm-hmm. So it's, to your point, Mom, it's like they're trying to control everything, and I don't think it might happen, but I think it's not going to happen, because we as a society are so diverse and so interconnected now with our technology that it's easier than ever to not only research this, but also I think that libraries have evolved over time with technology. Like I said in the introduction, I have access to an online library. So although I might not be able to check out a certain book at my public library, I can still find it somewhere else by a simple Google search or Amazon search or wherever. So I think that that's kind of my point. And I was researching this in my other marketing class, and technology has really evolved, but it's also evolved in good ways, but it's also evolved in ways that are not good, because it kind of has pushed and given outlet to this narrative that all books should be banned and people are being indoctrinated in public schools, and it's simply not true. Right. And I wish more people would understand that media literacy and critical thinking skills are crucial to not only human survival, but also society as a whole. Mm-hmm. Because, and also, how are you going to try, I mean, I went to school with people who were not the same religion as me, but I learned that they're entitled to the same human decency that I am.
Right.
And I heard this before, and I think that this is a form of hate, and I believe that they are actively trying to teach children to hate other people, in my opinion, which is just wrong.
I agree, but the language is veiled, right? Because they're saying we don't want to teach critical race theory because we don't want our children to feel bad about things that they didn't do. It's like, well, we're not trying to make them feel bad either.
Right.
Trying to
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
I think
It's not one thing. That's not one thing. Also, that's kind of main character syndrome main character syndrome too, isn't it? Right? You know what I mean?
right.
yeah,
I
and
don't
it's
know.
like when we read Night when I was in high school, I was never made to feel bad for what Jewish people went through during the Holocaust. I was never made to feel that bad.
No, none of us were, and none of us are
course.
supposed to feel bad, of course. I mean, we're supposed to feel bad for, I don't know, the victims, right?
Right, and that's who I feel bad for. I feel bad for the victims who were murdered in the Holocaust and exterminated because of hate.
Right.
Well,
And-
you're supposed to be appalled by it, and like
I am
Elie
appalled by it,
Wiesel's, Elie Wiesel's point is that the most dangerous of those characters, you have the oppressed, you have the oppressors, and you have the bystanders, and the bystanders are what kept his mind active for the last few decades of his life. He's like, how are there bystanders? And I think you use the word control a lot in your answer, and I think that's exactly what it comes down to. And it's about the fear of others, and then pretending others are okay as long as they stay small, and now trying to keep them small. You want to keep your others instead of incorporating, and that's not a place that I want to be.
So I'm going to end our discussion. First of all, I want to thank you guys, Kristin and Justin, for joining us. I just have one quick question before we wrap it up, and that is, would you recommend this documentary be shown in schools, libraries, or public meetings?
Yes.
100%,
I think it needs to be, and I hope it is.
Yeah, if I found out my kids watch this at school, I would be okay with it, because this is a part of history, and it's an important part of history, but it's also an important part of our society as well.
Yeah, and it's a time for us to be activists as well. Like, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing right now as a part of this conversation. And again, I really hope it opens up to a larger. The film begins streaming worldwide. I think they said in the fall, right?
September.
September.
I was going to say it's currently still circulating the film festivals, and
correct.
it'll be available.
Yes, and they do have a website, which I will put in our show notes. So
I hope this becomes part of curriculum one day, because
I
this
do too.
documentary was, and it was well done is the phrase I'm looking for. It was
Agreed.
Very well done.
Agreed.
Well, thank you for watching. If you want more content from us, listen to our audio podcast, The Made for TV Movie Club, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcast app. Oh, I thought you were going to list the apps for me to say.
No, I didn't make you do that today.
You can find us on the socials, including Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Just search for the Made for TV Movie Club podcast, MFTV MC podcast.
You're going to memorize it someday, kid.
We'll see you next time in the clubhouse.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.